Welcome to the Muscle Expert Podcast with Ben Pakulski, one of the world's top professional bodybuilders, an expert on human performance and mindset mastery. Ben dives deep to deliver the strategies of the top experts to upgrade your body, mind, muscle, strength, performance, biochemistry, and how to become the upgraded modern man.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Ben Pakulski. This is the Muscle Expert Podcast. You guys know I'm absolutely infatuated with brain function and brain health. And today we are going to interview a guy who experienced a traumatic brain injury in 2012 where he fell 12 stories and had a massive, massive trauma to his brain, something that doctors called basically fatal. 90% of people weren't going to make it, and the 10% who did were going to be vegetables for the rest of their life. Cavin Balaster tells us about his brain injury and how he's recovered from it, how he's now leading the brain health movement with a book called Feed a Brain, and he's teaching us the supplements and the foods and the lifestyle hacks to really live your greatest life with a brain that you love and live with your greatest brain. And it was an amazing conversation. Cavin is truly an inspiration. I'm very, very grateful to have had the time to speak with him today. He's a gentleman. He's a great, great leader, and he's really, truly an inspiration to hear his story about how he overcame such adversity. So I hope you enjoy the podcast with Cavin Balaster. And if you do, as always, I'd appreciate a review on iTunes. And each week we're going to be picking one winner, anyone who leaves a review, to win a prize pack from one of our amazing sponsors. So enjoy the show. All right, man. So, dude, teach me about how you got into this feeding a brain thing, because this is a very interesting conversation for me, interesting topic, because it hits home. And, you know, ultimately, if we're going to live a long, healthy, vibrant life, you got to make sure your brain is well nourished and well functioning. You know, it's finding the words, it's learning new memories, it's storing new memories, and ultimately having energy to kick ass and take names at life.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. Well, an extremely personal story brought me into this. 2011, I sustained a severe traumatic brain injury, was instantly unconscious, was rushed to the hospital, and put on life support. So while I was in a coma, I was given a diagnosis, a type of brain injury called a diffuse axonal injury. And if you go on Google and you type that in, you get source after source after source that all basically say the same thing. 90% of patients never wake up. And of the 10% that do, most remain in a persistent vegetative state.
Yeah, that's incredible, man. Yep.
So, yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess if I would make a very long story short, you know, a whole lot went into recovery. I didn't eat, walk, or talk for months. My left hand was completely flexed inward. I was breathing through tubes. I was eating through tubes. And at one point, I was steered towards a nutritional protocol, and I began to regain some clarity. And I was like, whoa, there's really something to nutrition. What's going on here? And so I used that regained clarity, and I began to research, first of all, research what the hell happened, because I'd been in a complete brain fog since my injury. And then, like, why did nutrition make such a big difference? And what could I do beyond nutrition? What could I do, period, to optimize my recovery? And so what I learned was that nutrition is the building blocks. That's what we build everything with. You know, you as a bodybuilder know that what we put in our mouth is what we use to build our bodies and our brains.
Becomes our body. Yeah.
Exactly. So I needed to figure out what was the optimal diet to power the neurons and glia in my brain.
Very, very fascinating. So I'm sure after an injury like you had, there was a lot of stuff going on, right? There was probably, obviously, you know, there was the direct trauma. There was probably inflammation as a result. There was probably the need to grow new neurons. So many different levels and things you had to look at, right? It wasn't just, hey, I need to fix this one thing. Like a lot of us are dealing with brain fog, or a lot of us are dealing with, you know, poor memory. That's just one thing. I'm sure you have to deal with all of those. So what was your first line of approach? How did you start? And I see you bring up Dr. Vasquez. I'd love to hear about him and how he had an integral role in that.
Yeah, Dr. V is amazing. Well, all right. So you say sometimes just one thing, you know, just like brain fog, or just forgetfulness, or just needing to remember more or be able to solve problems. But the bottom line is, what we want to do is give our brains the best shot to recover, to create new synapses, to grow neurons, all of that. We want to build the best environment. And what I realized is that inflammation anywhere in the body releases inflammatory cytokines that are small enough to cross even a healthy blood-brain barrier. So feeding my brain meant reducing inflammation everywhere. And so that was a really, really huge revelation for me. It's like, oh, this is not just about my brain health. I need my whole body to be healthy if my brain's going to be healthy. And you brought up Dr. Vasquez. So I reached out at the same time that I'm researching why nutrition's making a difference. I'm studying, I'm listening to podcasts and reading articles and watching videos. I mean, I'm relearning how to walk at this point, but we had the internet. And you'll hear this many times with people who are recovering from a debilitating condition. The internet is a godsend because it's like access to so much information that can help you when you can't go anywhere, So at the same time that I'm researching, I am reaching out to practitioners. And I actually came across a video on digestion from Dr. Alex Vasquez. And Dr. Vasquez is a doctor of osteopathic medicine, a doctor of naturopathic medicine, and a doctor of chiropractic medicine. He has 3 doctorates. That's a whole lot of school. He's written over 120 articles in peer-reviewed journals and like 20 textbooks. Wow. On the board of the Institute of Functional Medicine. I mean, this guy, he's amazing. And at the time, he was an adjunct professor for Bastyr University, which is one of the top naturopathic colleges in America. And he made online resources for his students. He made like lectures and stuff available to them. And I stumbled upon some of his videos, and I was able to watch some of the materials that he had for his college level students. And at one point, I reached out to Dr. Vasquez. I found him on Facebook, and I reached out to thank him for making those resources available. And I introduced myself, told him a bit about my story. And he's like, wow, Cavin, we have the International Conference on Human Nutrition and Functional Medicine coming up in a few months. And we have an entire day dedicated to the brain. And I think you should come. And I took a look, and it's for medical students and medical practitioners, and I'm neither. And I was like, wow, okay, I have to go. So I got on the plane for the first time after my injury, which had all sorts of vestibular issues involved in it.
Yeah.
Because if you've had a brain injury, chances are you have some vestibular issues going on afterward. And so, but I got there, and it was actually on the brain day that Dr. Vasquez, he was like, hey, I'm going to grab some coffee. You want to come? I'm like, yeah, of course I want to come. And so we're grabbing coffee, and he says, what was the #1 most effective therapy you did for your brain after your injury? And I said, honestly, Alex, healing my digestion was what made all the other therapies effective.
That's incredible. Talk to me about that. So I'm sure when you were going through this time in the hospital, there's a lot of stress to your digestive system. There's probably a lot of pharmaceuticals ingested. There's probably a lot of things going on, right? Tell me about what your first line of approach was to start attacking, healing the digestive tract.
Well, while I was in the hospital, honestly, and I work with clients who have loved ones in the hospital, and my mother was flying by the seat of her pants, putting out fires, trying to do whatever she could to help me, and really didn't have all that much time to dive into research all that much. However, my aunt just started getting into functional medicine. My aunt is a nurse practitioner. And so she was coming in and actually giving me B12 injections and other nutraceuticals, while I was in the hospital, kind of against the rules, but hush, hush, we won't tell anybody. Um, and so I was getting these nutrients early on, and I believe that truly helped immensely, as well as omega-3s. But what you're saying about there was lots of pharmaceuticals, and most concerning to me is the ingredients in the gastric feed that I was being fed.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I said I wasn't able to eat, so I wasn't able to eat conventionally. I was being fed through a tube that went directly into my stomach. And the ingredients of the stuff that they feed patients that are unable to eat conventionally are things like corn syrup, soy protein isolate, corn maltodextrin, calcium caseinate, canola oil.
Really?
Yeah, really.
That blows my mind.
I know. Everybody I tell it to, they're like, you got to be kidding. And I thought the same thing. It's like, yeah, of course, they're giving people in the hospital food that's going to help them heal, right? Like, that would make sense. Of course, that's what they're doing. But no, that's not what they're doing. And I realize a lot of it has to do with business and politics and really who has the contracts for these feeds and nutrition contracts with the hospitals.
Gosh.
Yeah.
That's almost discouraging, right? Like you're working so hard to heal yourself and heal your brain, and all of a sudden, like you're getting more toxic burden to your body on the back end with poor nutrition.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. So that's something that I'm really working to change. That reality. I mean, it's unacceptable. I think we can all stand behind that. You don't give somebody who's trying to recover from a brain injury or any injury for that matter, corn syrup for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, plus 2 extra meals, because when you're eating nothing but sugar, you need to eat quite a bit. So yeah, I definitely want to change that reality. But having my aunt come in and supply some of that was super important. And then she steered me towards a functional neurologist, which is a profession that is gaining more traction. More people know about it. Actually, they've had traction for quite some time. But that's another aspect that was very cool, which is essentially taking several safe and effective modalities for neurorehabilitation and implementing them strategically, as well as using what we know about the neuroplastic nature of the brain, and really targeting neuroplastic change in specific areas to affect function.
That sounds like an extremely intriguing conversation to have. So moving along from the things that you did to heal your gut, was there anything supplementally you started to do, or was it just starting to remove the corn syrup that they were putting into you effective with that started to heal the gut? Because obviously we know that's just going to contribute,
right.
At least we seem to know that's going to contribute to more inflammation in your body. So once you became aware of that, did you start to implement? So like obviously your aunt was giving you injections, but was there anything dietarily that started to make the shift for you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So after a brain injury, and it's very common after a brain injury to have leaky gut or intestinal permeability. same thing, you know.
Yeah.
But it's very common because you're injuring the brain, which is reducing communication to the gut. And when communication to the gut is reduced, the gut becomes more permeable. And what that means is that undigested food particles can cross into the bloodstream undigested, which then creates an immune response, inflames the gut, which sends inflammatory cytokines, which can cross the blood-brain barrier and inflame the brain. And when the brain's inflamed, reduce communication with the gut, which makes it more permeable and more particles and get through. And so it's this vicious cycle that exacerbates itself. I hope that made sense.
Absolutely. Perfect sense.
Yep. And so first thing we want to do is heal the gut. And it's not just removing the foods, like that's definitely number one. We need to stop injuring ourselves, right? We need to remove what's causing the damage, but then we also need to bandage up what damage is already there. So it's about stopping the insult while bandaging what's already injured. So we were using compounds like L-glutamine, white willow bark extract, marshmallow root extract. These are all compounds that are really useful in healing digestion. And that's honestly, as my digestion began to heal, that's when I regained clarity. And that was huge. And all right, now that the gut is healed, which is a huge part of everything, now I need to know what are the nutrients that are optimal for my function.
Yeah.
And that's what How to Feed a Brain is all about. So let me tell you the story of that. You know, I was talking about Dr. Vasquez, and I ended up going to that conference. I actually ended up being invited on stage at one point, and I got to speak to a crowd of 500 medical students and practitioners, essentially the future of medicine. And that's when I realized, whoa, I can really make a difference. And my whole path began to crystallize of what I was going to do. And but I stayed in touch with Dr. Vasquez, and at one point I was like, "Hey, Dr. V, I am really looking for a resource on brain nutrition, on the metabolism of brain cells. So I wanna know about neurometabolism, or how the brain derives energy." I'm like, "Can you point me towards something?" Because I'll tell you, Dr. Vasquez's work is very in-depth scientific, as I said, with his credentials. He's written a lot of really technical, in-depth information about many, many, many subjects. And I was like, "Do you have a resource on brain nutrition?" And he says, "You know what? No, I don't have one I'd point you towards." And I'm like, "You should write that." And he said, "No, you know what? You should." And so that's what I've done with How to Feed a Brain.
Beautiful.
Is create the resource that I wish I had. And I wanted to make sure it all was I wanted to do Dr. Vasquez proud and many others proud. So there are over 400 citations in it. Very well researched. I made sure that it was a solid work.
So one of the things that I'm very interested in is neuroplasticity. So a lot of us grow up anyways, and I'm sure you may have been the same with this fixed mindset, meaning I have what I've got and I can't change it. When you finally realize you can change it, and anything that you have in your life that you're unhappy with, you have the ability to change your brain and your life. That became a very interesting conversation for me. Hey, ladies and gents, I interrupt this podcast to tell you about nerve growth factor. What's nerve growth factor? So as we age, it used to be believed that our brains were stagnant and we couldn't add new neurons. We couldn't add new synapses, as we talk about today in this podcast. But we now know that your brain is always producing new neurons. It's always generating new nerves by something that's called nerve growth factor. And when we stimulate this in our brain starts to actually become more plastic. It allows us to learn new Exercises allows us to learn new movements, new activities, and form new memories. All the new neurons, or many of the new neurons, are formed in the hippocampus, and that's all stimulated by things called like BDNF and nerve growth factor. BDNF is brain-derived nootropic factor, massively increased during exercise. So anytime you want to learn, it's a really good thing to incorporate exercise into your life. It's also a very good thing to incorporate something that stimulates nerve growth factor, which, as you guys know, is lion's mane. I've become a massive advocate of lion's mane. I literally consume it at least twice a day, every day. I haven't started giving it to my kids yet, but that just popped in my mind. That might be a good idea. Imagine the brain potential, but I'm not that silly scientist of a dad that would expose my kids to something that we aren't familiar with. But anyways, this podcast is brought to you by Four Sigmatic, my supplier of lion's mane. And I've had so many awesome reviews from you guys telling me how much you're appreciating using lion's mane. You've added it to your morning routine with the Intelligence Coffee mix of alpha GPC and MCT and lion's mane. So 600 milligrams of GPC is what I use, about 15 grams of MCT and 3 grams of lion's mane every morning into my coffee. And it makes me happy, and it lights up my brain. It's a morning ritual that I execute literally every day now. And if I'm not having coffee, because sometimes I'm not on caffeine, I'm using a nice dark tea that's caffeine-free, like a rooibos, and it just is a beautiful way to start my day, light my brain up, and crush life. I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. And if you want to try the Intelligence Coffee, head over to foursigmatic.com/muscle, and you pick up your lion's mane and add it to your GPC and MCT every morning. Enjoy the show. I'd love to know how we can begin to support that supplementally, like you started to bring on. Is there things we can actually do to improve the neuroplastic qualities of the brain?
Absolutely. And I really like the way you put that, we can change our brains. If there's things about our personality we don't like, we have the ability to mold this 3-pound gelatinous mass within our skulls, Mm-hmm. And understanding that, understanding that is so powerful, just in every aspect of our lives. But we'll come back to that. But getting that I can change my brain and improve it, which is part of the whole idea of functional neurology. So this is the analogy I use. I tell people that many connections in my brain have been damaged. Mm-hmm. And I think of rebuilding those connections like building a bridge. So what do you need to build a bridge? You need supplies and you need skilled workers. Supplies would be the nutrition, the brain-building nutrition, the right kind of nutrition. And then also getting that supplies to the construction site. So getting it from your digestion to your brain, which would then be healing your digestion so that you're actually absorbing the nutrients that you're ingesting. And then once it's at the site, now we need skilled workers to build those bridges. And skilled workers would be the therapy, the targeted therapy, the right kind of therapy, and also the mindset, the motivation, the purpose behind it. Because if we don't want to build anything, we're not gonna,
That positive framing is so vital to success in changing your brain, right? Like I've been a student of the brain for many years now, and I experience a lot of athletes, beginners, and the most high-level athletes in the world. And you see that how they frame their life inside their brain determines success and failure 100% of the time. If there's someone who believes they can change, if there's someone who's excited about the future, if they're positively framing their life, even if they have a gratitude practice, they will change like 100% of the time. You're a special case though, because there's so many things that have been damaged in there, and we've previously had a belief that your brain or your body couldn't repair neurons. So I'm so curious to hear how you were able to support that nutritionally, and then what exercise you're using to continue that progression.
Yeah. So as you said, we used to think that the brain was fixed, it was immutable, and you drink a beer, you kill however many brain cells, and they're never coming back, And we just found that to be completely false. You know, it never really sat very well with me anyways. It's like, so you're saying you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I know for a fact you can. It's just hard. They're pretty stubborn, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that has to do with building new pathways in the brain. And this is what's really tricky, is building new pathways when you already have established ones. It's like, not only do you need to build these new pathways, but you have to convince the signals that go down the path of least resistance to change what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I think of it like you know, you've been going down this same pathway all your life. That pathway now is now like a 6-lane highway, you know? Mm-hmm. And now you want to do something different. You're going to have to like go through the woods and like move branches out the way and like traverse through some like difficult new uncharted territory, right? And it's not going to be easy, especially when you could just take this 6-lane highway.
That's the perfect analogy, man. It makes so much sense. Yep.
But then, you know, after a while, we do that. We move all the stuff, we excavate it, and then we keep on going down that pathway, and it becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. And now this new and better way becomes part of our brain plasticity, and it becomes what we do, right? And so there are definitely nutritional ways we can support this. I have a supplement guide on my website.
Yep.
Just on the main page, there's a supplement handout that you can download, and that gives you some like main supplements that are just great for brain and body health. But if you want the exact like synaptogenic, what that means is synapto has to do with the synapse. So when two neurons come together, a synapse is formed, and the synapse is where communication from one neuron to the next happens. So making new connections is synaptogenic, right? And genic would be creation. So creating new synaptic connections. That's what synaptogenic means. So there are certain nutrients that have been shown to really support synaptogenesis. And one of them is choline. Specifically, I like citicholine, CITI choline. And you can learn more about this at feedabrain.com/synapto. That's SYNAPTO. And we wrote an article about how these three do it. So I gave you choline. Citicholine is my favorite form. The other is DHA, which is a type of omega-3. And like high quality omega-3s like fish oils, and fish oils aren't created equal. So look at the back and see how much EPA and DHA are in there, and want to make sure there's a good amount of both of those. Mm-hmm. But DHA specifically is another extremely important component of synaptogenesis that we definitely want to include. And the final is uridine. So uridine monophosphate is my favorite, and most people aren't too aware of how awesome uridine is.
I know I'm not. I saw it on your website here, and I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, so uridine is a phosphatide precursor, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's a component of RNA, and it's we actually produce it through choline metabolism, I believe. However, it is so much more efficient when we supply it in its active form. So it's kind of taking a shortcut in it. And on top of it, it's like so well tolerated. Like I think the FDA said that like up to 10 grams is okay. And you're never going to do more than like 2. So don't worry about it. but yeah, that stuff's great. And those are three supplements that I would absolutely recommend.
Oh, wonderful, man. That's great recommendations. Thank you for that. So moving along to today, how are you beginning to, I'd love to hear how your life has transitioned from even what you were doing before the accident and then to what you're doing after the accident and what you're able to do now. Do you continue to move forward? And what are your best mechanisms for improving your ability to retain information and learn?
Yeah, what I was doing, what I'm doing now, and how, well, clearly things have changed a whole lot.
Yeah.
One of my friends was like, "You've changed." And I'm like, "You're damn right, I've changed."
Yeah, so thank you, right? Yeah.
I'm like, it'd be weird if I didn't change. Are you kidding me? I was this close to death. In fact, like Rachel Raymond says it really well, and she's an oncologist in New York. She wrote a book called My Grandfather's Blessings, and it's a beautiful, beautiful book. But she's an oncologist, and she works with terminally ill patients all the time. And I'm going to paraphrase here, but she said something like, when you're standing at the edge of life, looking over the vastness of it, so many of those things that used to matter so much don't matter at all. And some of those things, and the things that still do matter a great deal more. And I couldn't have said that better. It's just, it's beautiful. It's so true. Like,
It's
you
very, very
really
true.
get a perspective on life where, like, all the things, all the nitpicky things that people worry about. Yeah, I'm not worried about them at all. So that's one way in which my life has changed, is that perspective. What I did before my injury is I played music. I ran a sound equipment rental company, and I bartended in New York, right? And since my injury, like, lots of recovery. It's been very difficult, and I have no intention of going back to that, because what I realized, what has always held true to me, is purpose in life is to positively influence other lives. That's what it is to me. And I realized with my injury that I am able to positively affect way more lives in a much greater way. And that is a gift.
Yeah, one of our greatest opportunities as someone who's had an experience like that is being able to pull those people through who are probably going through it now, because there's probably thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people going through some traumatic time right now. And just the fact that you made it through, just the fact that you made it through with such a positive outlook, and you've improved your life, you've upgraded your life, is such an important message to get across, because as we speak about very, very often, it's just the way you frame it in your mind, right? If you can change your framing in your mind, you have such a greater opportunity. And when you start to understand the neurochemistry and you start to understand the neurophysiology of what's happening, it's so important to be in a positive mindset, a positive framing of mind for your body to change. If you're always in a stress state with elevated cortisol, your amygdala will always override your ability to store new memories and create new synapses, like you speak of, right?
Perfect. Yes. Yes, your amygdala is powerful. Your entire limbic system takes over if you let it. And what's funny about, like, stress, as humans, we're evolutionarily set up where we get really stressed when there's something trying to kill us. Because as we were evolving, and we were cavemen, hunter-gatherers, whatever, and there was a saber-toothed tiger, it'd be like, okay, my life's in danger. I need to run. And, digestion, that's going to the bottom of my list. I need to get the hell out of here, right?
Yeah.
The thing is, we don't really know the difference. I mean, it's actually our perception is the difference. All that we need is a perception that this is life or death, and it becomes life or death to our entire physiology, right? So if we can choose our perception of things, which we are able to do. We can choose to put our attention on the perception that serves us in the most beneficial way. But most of us don't. We place our attention on the perception that honestly is the most dramatic, which of course just fuels a fire of cortisol and limbic firing. And you are absolutely right. It's hard to create new memories when our limbic system is in overdrive. I know this for a fact, like as I was writing my story and going through trying to figure out what happened while I was in the hospital. I'm interviewing friends and family, and they're like, God, I don't remember. Do you have any idea how stressed I was during that time? Like, it's all a blur to me.
Right.
And that's exactly what happens, is we lose our ability to form new memories when we're under intense stress.
Yeah, that's a fascinating thing, right? Evolutionarily, it makes a lot of sense. Like your brain doesn't want you to remember that stuff. So,
right.
I mean, you would probably just stress yourself out to death ultimately if you kept reliving it.
And no woman would have more than one child.
Exactly.
Be like, I remember how much I hurt. I'm not doing that again. Yeah, it's actually, I don't think we're not able to truly remember pain, like in the exact sense of it, which is a defense mechanism in many ways, and also an evolutionary tactic so that we have more than one child, right? But the idea of remembering pain, and it's really beneficial to us as well, because when we think of pain not as, pain comes from the Latin word pena, which means to punish. And the thing is, it's not punishment for punishment's sake. I believe it was Dr. Norman Doidge who wrote in his book, The Brain That Changes Itself. He's talking about this pain doctor. I wish I could remember his name. But he essentially snapped his femur doing something kind of stupid, and femur is like the biggest bone in the human body. And he's like, he was a pain specialist, right? And he snaps his femur, and he's like, it's laying there screaming, and he said his pain literally went to zero at one point. Did not feel any pain. And then as soon as he moved a little bit, boom, pain shot up to 10.
Right.
But when he didn't, 0. So what is the point of pain? Pain is, he was being penalized for moving because it was putting his already injured leg at danger of being more injured. But he was totally rewarded by not moving, by having absolutely no pain, right? And so pain is not good. Pain is not bad, though. Pain is there for one reason, and that's to get our attention.
Yeah, I say that all the time to my kids, right? It's actually a blessing. I said to be grateful for pain. If you burn yourself on the stove, or you cut yourself with a knife and it hurts, you say thank you, because, well, why wouldn't you, right? It's there to tell you, hey, don't do that again. Because if pain wasn't there, you kept your hand on the stove, we'd have big problems. You'd probably have no more hand, right? So we have to learn to just be like, oh, thank you for telling me that. Thank you for this amazing awareness. Let's continue to move on. And, then you can have a better relationship with pain. It doesn't have to be this fear relationship where like, oh, I don't want to experience pain. Pain is. It's just something that's there. It's this state of equanimity, right? Where I don't judge it. I just know it's there. I say thank you and I move on. And there's so many things in life where, the second dart, to use, a term we gathered from the Buddha's Brain, which is an amazing book by Rick Hanson, if you don't know it. Just the second dart is always the worst. It's our impression of the events rather than the events themselves that causes the greatest amount of harm.
Absolutely. It was, I used that exact term yesterday when we're talking about something as simple as like, quote unquote, cheating on a diet. And it's like, and then beating yourself up afterward. It's like, you're worse off. Like, you beating yourself up about eating the food is worse than eating the food. Like, don't beat yourself up,
Yeah, because then you're just driving stress up even higher, making you want to eat more, right? Your brain's going to seek relief from that elevated cortisol, and it's going to seek more junk and more sugar, and that's just the way it is. Whereas you put a smile on your face. There's actually some doctors who claim that, or they put up the statement to say, like eating, junk, eating, effectively whatever would come from a convenience store, compared to eating a big bowl of broccoli. If you eat the junk in a positive state of mind, enjoying it and being really happy, it may actually not be as bad for you as eating broccoli in a really bad state of mind. And that's pretty subjective, obviously pretty extreme ends of the continuum. But the reality is if I'm super stressed and I hate eating this broccoli so much and my mind is on this massive state of cortisol and, resistance to anything, I'm angry, versus like actually being joyful and eating cotton candy as I walk through Disneyland, which one's actually worse, right?
I love it. Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know. It'd be an interesting study, right? But I love how we play into the neurochemistry of it all. And not only neurochemistry, I think that's too simplistic when we talk about just neurochemistry. We're talking about the connectome of the brain. And the connectome is how the 86 billion neurons are networked. So there are trillions of connections in our brain, and like we are not even close to understanding the complexity of this. But honestly, we know a whole lot about the brain, and utilizing what we know about the brain. This is what's amazing about where we are with our knowledge and the information age, and being able to utilize all this information and these tools that we have literally at our fingertips. It's really profound what we can do to optimize our brain function and to upgrade our lives.
I love it, man. Are you getting an opportunity now to travel around and educate people? I love the fact you've put out a book, and consider me a customer. I'm going to be a guy who's picking up that book as one, as a parent, want to learn how to support proper neurological function and growth in my children, but two, as an aging man, 37 years old, people would probably want to slap me upside the head for saying aging, but at some point I realize I'm going to be getting older, and I want to optimize it now and to reduce the stress. Are you having an opportunity now to get out and really spread your word? Because I think this is such an important thing, and we're so grateful for you, Cavin.
Well, thank you so much. And yeah, absolutely what you're saying with protecting the brain. That's the thing. So the book is called How to Feed a Brain: Nutrition for Optimal Brain Function and Repair. And if I wanted to make it longer, I could have said function, protection, and repair. But I left that out because everything that's in there is to put your brain in the best environment, and we do that by first with our food, and then also with our emotional state. And my next book is going to be about feeding the mind and how to choose where we place our attention and use our thoughts to our benefit. But yes, I am going around. I'm traveling a lot. I am so open to speaking opportunities. Everywhere I'm going, you can contact me, and we can set something up. I'm doing a bit of the circuit right now. Tomorrow I'll be in San Antonio speaking for the Department of Health and Human Services, which is really exciting. But yeah, I'm getting around a bit. Where are you located, Ben?
I'm in Tampa.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, get me to Florida.
Have you down here, man. If you're down here, you've got a place here, man. Come down. We'll record a live podcast, do a little more talking about brain health. So one question I definitely want to ask you is, you've got potentially hundreds of thousands of listeners out there. what few tips would you give to all of our listeners that everyone should be implementing right now to maximize brain health and function as we all get older, every 1 minute at a time, 1 day at a time?
Ooh, all right. I love it. Let's start with a nutritional tip. First of all, what you can start doing right now is implementing plenty of high DHA fish oil. I think that's a great start for your brain health. Absolutely. Another thing that's really powerful for brain health is going to be uridine and choline. So I gave you those already. But let's move beyond nutrition. And I think, I even say this in my book, the healthiest thing you can do for your brain, your body, and your soul is to enjoy your life and to do so sustainably. Mm-hmm. And what that means is you don't just drink excessively every night and be like, I'm enjoying my life, and throw caution to the wind and rot your liver, but you're having fun, Honestly, though, I've seen, some people out there that can just do that and live to I don't know, in their 80s, and it's good life. They've had a good time, and they've positively influenced people around them, and good on them. But they usually just croak from a heart condition or something like that, like right away, right?
Right. My articulation of that is everyone kind of lives till they're 30 and feels like they're invincible, and they reach 30 and they're like, oh man, or whatever arbitrary young age, and they're like, oh, I can't do that anymore. And then they start looking for people like us and people to guide them and let them know, okay, how do I not only reverse what I've done, but actually how do I improve on what I've been doing and really maximize my life? And that's where we all live, right? At some point we kind of burn the candle at both ends and hammered it. I know I did through my 20s and was doing some dumb shit. But now as I get older, I'm like, man, I love my kids. I love my family. I feel like I'm fine wine, man. Every day I'm getting better. So how do we continue to support that, right? Like, what things should we be taking out of our life that are killing our brain? What things should we be adding in that are going to optimize it?
Love it. Yeah. Simple move to take away wheat and milk. Mm-hmm. That's there's just so much research that shows that those are two compounds that are very damaging to the brain. So let's get those out of there.
So I'm gonna throw something out at you because I'm researching uridine here on examine.com, and just because you brought up drinking, it says uridine is a nucleotide base found in high levels in beer. So we're talking about drinking and uridine at the same time. So maybe if people research uridine, they shouldn't look for beer as a supplement.
There you go. Beer's, it's enjoy your life, do so sustainably. Mm-hmm. That's if that's where you're going to get your uridine. You're probably not getting a whole lot from it, but yeah. That's funny. I didn't know that. So yeah, we want to enjoy our lives. We want to remove the wheat, remove the dairy. So like you said, beer that has wheat in it, almost always. But there are some gluten-free options out there. The other thing is having our blood sugar under control. Most people have an aversion to, pricking their finger and making themselves bleed on a stick and see what their blood sugar is at. Like, no, I'm not diabetic, but honestly, it is such a cheap and effective tool that tells us so much about our health. When we track our blood glucose throughout the day, and now I have a ketone meter as well. Mm-hmm. So it measures what my ketones are at and what my blood glucose is at. And it's funny, if I'm above 0.6, it's like, check with your healthcare provider because you may be in ketoacidosis. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not a problem with me, And I think that's important to know, that if your blood sugar is not super high, you're not in danger of ketoacidosis. So I might be going off on a tangent a little bit and
No,
bringing
I
up.
think it's actually very relevant, because that was one of the questions I wanted to ask was, are you following a ketogenic diet, and did that play a role in your recovery? Because there's been some pretty advanced research now speaking about the cognitive benefits of being in ketosis. And the fact you brought that up is just kind of pointing us down that direction.
Yeah, perfect. Well, yeah, and I also appreciate how you said a ketogenic diet and not the ketogenic diet, because it drives me crazy when people talk about the ketogenic diet, and I'm like, oh, is that the opposite of the glucose diet? Like, what we're talking about is a different fuel source for us to derive energy. And so ketones are what that fuel source is. And there are so many different ways to practice a ketogenic diet. Several of them are very high in dairy, and that's not one that I practice. But the Feed a Brain meal plan it can be ketogenic. I don't think ketogenic is for everybody, and it's not for everybody right now. Some of us need to move into ketogenic metabolism. We need to find our rhythm, and we need to make the switch, because our liver's not used to not getting its sugar. I know it wasn't for me. It was like, what are you doing? where's the fuel,
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm giving you fat, and it's like, I don't know what to do with this. Come on, give me some sugar, give me some sugar, baby. And so switching over for me was tiptoeing, and it was bit by bit, and having real food options to kind of make that swap was so important. But yes, I do practice Feed a Brain keto style meal plan. So I've actually been experimenting with fasting, Feed a Brain style. So I'm making sure I supply all the nutrients that that are in the meal plan. So the 3 different types of vegetables, plenty of fish, and organ meats and sea vegetables and things of that sort. I make sure I get all those, but I might just have one meal a day or one meal every other day, which is amazing. I never used to be able to do that, and now I'm not even hungry. I feel good, and I don't eat until I feel like it. But as soon as I feel like it, I'll probably eat.
It's such a beautiful thing, man. I love that you're so in tune with your body, because, speaking transparently about myself, for 15 to 20 years, I was meticulously attached to having to eat every 2 to 3 hours. I was a professional bodybuilder, and that was my job. And now, since having left that, it's hard to break these unconscious habits and rituals around eating as soon as you wake up, and then having to eat at dinner time. And even trying to teach my kids, like, eat when you're hungry. You don't have to eat at this particular time. The only meal that we have together as a family is we have dinner at 6:00. Other than that, man, you can eat what you want when you want. Like, getting away from this stigma of having to eat every, as someone who wants to be fit, everyone in the fitness industry, I eat every 3 hours, you're going to die or lose something's going to explode. I love the fact that you're just eating intuitively, right? Like, follow your body, because nobody's meant to eat every 3 hours. Nobody's meant to eat 6 times a day or even 3 times a day necessarily.
Right. Yeah, it's really cool to be able to do that. And the other thing is, breakfast does not need to be breakfast foods. That is such a huge thing with my clients, is getting them to make that mental switch, because most breakfast foods are either high in carbohydrates, like cereal or oatmeal, or they're inflammatories, like yogurt or eggs for some people. So moving that away, like I'll have steak and greens for breakfast. Often,
Same as me, man. Every single day, and an avocado. That's about it.
Nice, yeah. Great breakfast, and I feel awesome. And that is if I'm having breakfast. Right now, I'm sipping on a mug of bone broth, and that's kind of going to be my breakfast today.
Beautiful. That's excellent, man. And I've been digging into the benefits of bone broth, the benefits of collagen and glycine and all these things, and it seems like the benefits are truly endless. If you want to improve your sleep, you take it before bed. If you want to improve your blood sugar, you take it before meals. So many benefits to just glycine or collagen, which is obviously what you're ultimately getting from bone broth. So you're definitely covering all your bases, man. There's so many multitudes of benefits there for glycine.
Yeah. For so many things. In addition, minerals, just a great mineral balance. And especially when you're doing ketogenic metabolism, bone broth, like a salted bone broth, is great for mineral replacement as well.
Fantastic, Cavin. Where can people find you and find out more about what you're doing, buddy?
Yeah, so the book is How to Feed a Brain, Nutrition for Optimal Brain Function and Repair. We launched the Feed a Brain interview series where I got to interview some of the top brain and nutrition experts like Dr. David Perlmutter, who's a 4 times New York Times bestseller, Dr. Dati Skrazin, who wrote Why Isn't My Brain Working?, Dr. Terry Walls, author of The Walls Protocol, Norga Gaudis, author of Primal Body, Primal Mind, Jessica Flanagan, Dr. Daniel Engel, list goes on. There's like 11 really awesome brain nutrition experts. And you can preview that at feedabrain.com/preview. And you can check that out. I think I have it set up. You can watch the first couple minutes of every interview for free.
Yeah, I've been snooping around your site here, man. You got some great stuff. I was very impressed with the list of interview series guests, especially Dr. Krause. I think he's doing incredible things. Obviously, Perlmutter is incredible. So, yeah, man, keep doing what you're doing, buddy. You're definitely getting the information out there as you create a platform for yourself. More and more people like myself are going to keep watching. So thank you. Very grateful for you and all that you do, man, truthfully.
Thank you so much. One more thing is follow me on social media. All like Feed a Brain, at Feed a Brain across the gamut, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff.
Perfect. And I'm going to link to all that in the show notes, and it'll all be at the website, Cavin. So, all the guests will be able to definitely check out your stuff and grab your book. And I see you've also got some supplements on here. You've got an awesome guide to fats. You got a couple other really interesting guides on here. So how to feed a brain and get started with your supplements. So anyone who wants to check that out, definitely head over to feedabrain.com and check out Cavin Balaster. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you, Ben. My pleasure.
Join us on benpakulski.com to learn the cutting-edge techniques to take control of your body, your brain, and create your greatest life.
This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Ben Pakulski and the producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.